Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Lady K Chat, a podcast that is designed for men and women to become better versions of themselves, which is broadcast every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Various subjects will be spoken upon, such as relationships, health and wellness, personal development, wealth building, children, and so much more. She is a two-time Amazon best-selling author, an international speaker, and life coach. She is Lady K. And now for your host, Lady K. Viewer discretion is advised. This podcast contains material and language that may be disturbing and not suitable for all audiences.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm so glad you are back on the Lady K Chat podcast. Welcome, everyone, and we are starting the new year correctly. We're going to start off by talking about family secrets because we don't want to do it no more. It is 2021, a brand new year, and I'm so excited today to have this lovely guest with me. I couldn't do this without her because a lot of people are afraid to talk about this topic, but she's not, and I'm not, and y'all know I always announce the elephant in the room. I would like everyone to give a warm welcome to this beautiful woman who is a 5-time published author. She is the co-owner of the Sistership talk show, and we all love to call her Mama C because she is loved by many daughters. Please help me welcome Miss Deborah Cofer. How are you, Miss Cofer?
I am wonderful and so glad to be here with you, Kalima, one of God's greatest spirits. I mean, I feel your energy. I see your energy. I hear your energy. And all of that really is God working in you, with you, for you, and through you to others. And I just love that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, I love to have you here with me today, too, because, I love your spirit as well. And this is why I invited you on today. You are my first guest of the year. So I love that. And, I want to dig into something deep, and I know that you're open to talk about this. And I was talking about the audience family secrets, but the particular secret that I'm talking about is sexual abuse. And when people know that is going on in the family, how they tend just not to want to talk about it. And I know it kills me. I'm going to talk about that later, but it kills me how they want to protect the predator and not the innocent. But before I even get there, I know you experienced this in your family. So Mama C, I want to know, can you tell the audience a little bit about your story on what you experienced during sexual abuse?
Absolutely. It started before I even went into kindergarten. So I'm going to say I was about 4 years old, and there was never any penal penetration. My father used to perform oral sex on me while he masturbated. And this went on from age 4 to 5. And then I went to live with my aunt in Connecticut, his sister. And I returned back home at 2 months before my 10th birthday. And it began again. And my sisters, at the age of 12, both of my sisters had left. And I'm not going to talk about anything that happened with that. I know my oldest sister admitted to me by phone that she had been sexually abused by our father as well. And I told her, so had I. And she died not long after of cancer of the urethra, which is in our private area. I mean, sometimes people need to realize that wherever we are abused, sometimes the pain settles in that spot. And as a result, my sister ended up with cancer of the urethra. And we think that, basically that's where her pain and her shame and her sorrow and her hurt and everything kind of settled in her body.
Right.
And so it continued on from age 10 to 15. At age 15, I had become kind of sort of a militant. You know, the Black Power movement was in process. Angela Davis, you know, we were marching for the rights for Angela Davis. And I had become a champion of other people's rights. And by 15, I became a champion of my own. And that right was not to be touched in a way that I did not like, in a way that I knew was not right. And so my father, who by 15 had both his legs, well, actually one leg amputated, and he was a diabetic, and he came wheeling with that one leg, because he was wheelchair bound by then, into my room one evening. And I got so furious. Here's this man now in a wheelchair, one leg, and he's still trying to perpetrate this abuse on me. I said to him, I said, if you ever touch me again, I'll kill you. See, my father was 6'2", 220 pounds. Here I was, a young girl. I was frightened of him, but I had found my strength. I had found that power within me, which actually was God. God gave me that power to stand up for myself, to know what was right and what was wrong, and to stand strong for it. And I think that's what we all have to learn to do, is to understand what's right and what's wrong, and stand up for what's right. So after then, but I tell you, from 15 to the age of 21, I never had a good night's sleep in that house, because I never knew if he was ever going to try it again. So at 21, I left because I got pregnant with my daughter, and somehow I knew I was having a girl. And I was fearful that if I ever had to go out and leave my daughter, that he would abuse her. I moved out and into a little rooming house that was, a room was no bigger than a lot of people's closet. Wow. But I felt safe, and I knew my baby was safe. It had a bed, it had a dresser, and I had my baby's bassinet and a safe place, comfortable place for her. I was good. And I began my journey to being who I've become today. Right. And let me tell you, we all have the right to stand up for ourselves. And I think it's important. And I'll never forget, one time a social worker, I was in what's called middle school, but was junior high school at the time in New York, and Booker T. Washington Junior High School. That's where I was. And a social worker came to the house, because by age 12, 13, we had moved into a transient hotel. Okay. And the woman who worked the desk contacted Children's Services and said, there's something going on there, but there was no mother. My mother was in a mental institution, more in than out. Okay. So we kind of did what we wanted to do. We threw parties, we had hooky parties, we did what we want. Never mind, I had to pay the price for that later on, because I quit high school, had to go back, get my GED, and go on to college and do all these other things. But she came in and she was questioning me. And I wanted so badly to tell her what was going on, but I was afraid what would happen to me and what would happen to my brothers who were there in a home. I was afraid for all of us. So I lied. So I think, at that particular point, I don't think that people were too open to even considering that maybe there was some sexual abuse going on. Right. They can handle the physical abuse and the neglect and stuff like that, but I don't think that they had the caliber of training that was required to identify when something was wrong. Because if you're somebody who can read body language, tone of voice, and all of that, when someone's lying or something is wrong when They're not telling you the whole truth.
Absolutely.
So, but she left, I guess she closed the case. I swore up and down nothing was wrong and whatever. But you know what? You have to consider when you go in. Children are afraid. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my siblings if
They
they're
are.
siblings? You know, so we 9 times out of 10, we're not going to tell the truth because we don't want to be displaced. We
Right.
don't want to be separated from our siblings. And, you know, I took the protected mode at that point in my life. I was the family protector. I protected my family. And so whatever I had to go through in order to protect my family, at the time I was willing to do that. So, you know, but I think that hopefully children's services have advanced enough and that they have social workers who are a little bit more discerning when
Right.
it comes to understanding what's really going on, that something's going on beyond what that child is saying.
Right. I want to
Go
interject with
ahead.
what you're saying about children and youth because I have family members that had experienced something similar to you. And I have to tell you, for my
Right.
part, I am highly disappointed in children and youth because they didn't have enough evidence. And you know why they didn't have enough evidence? Because the child didn't speak up. But they clearly stated they knew the child was afraid, but they didn't know why the child was afraid. And it's like, of course, this child is little and innocent. And this child is particularly 5 years old. And he didn't say much. So because of that, they saw nothing. But when the child got a little bit more comfortable and he reported it to his counselor, and when it went to the counselor, she reported it back to children and youth, and children and youth still came back and said unfounded. So I'm still disappointed in children and youth because I don't think they're pushing all the way
Wow.
they should. And even in this pandemic, I know it's like they're very overwhelming because a lot of times these children are home with their abuser. So, like you said, Miss Deborah, they're in a state of mind like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. I don't want to say anything because when they leave, they know they're still trapped at home with their abuser. So I kind of
Yeah.
can definitely understand what you're saying, but I'm sorry. I think children and youth need to do a lot better. I don't. I'm just lost for words with them. I'm just so disappointed. You know.
Yeah, and I hear you. You know what? I lived in a perpetual state of fear
Right.
from age 4 to 21 when I moved out of my parents' home. I had never had a good night's sleep. A lot of times I didn't go to school because, you know, I was up all night,
Right.
afraid. So I would watch TV all night long. I mean, back then, around 6 a.m., the flag started flying on the TV. The fuzz came on. You know, you didn't have 24-hour TV.
Right. 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 I remember
So
that.
there was a period of time when it just shut down.
Right.
So then I lay and sleep because by then it was a little light. There was light. And you know, he never came into my room when it was light. It was
Hmm.
always in during the darkness, during the dark
Hmm.
hours of the night. Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, but because people like that, you know, he was a predator. My
Right.
father was a predator.
Right.
That's the reality. You know, he was a pedophile.
Right.
Let's be very clear. And so, you know, if even if he didn't perpetrate it on other children, he perpetrated it on his
His
own
own
children.
children, and
So
that's
he didn't need
sick.
his own,
That's
and
sick.
that's sick.
And
That's
I
as
have
sick
another
as it
question for
gets.
you. I have a question for you, Mama,
Okay.
because I heard you. I heard you said earlier back. You know, your mom was in and out of the mental institution. Do you think he perpetrated because your mother had a mental health condition?
You know what? I think when my mother found out that he was sexually abusing his daughters, I think that's what caused her to become mentally ill. She could not handle it. She was a little lady, you know. I think my mother was about 5'1", 5'2", 98 pounds. I mean, little lady at the time. And
So he took advantage.
he took it, yeah.
Took
And I
advantage.
don't think she didn't know where to turn. And back in those days, you kept those skeletons in the closet,
Right.
and it began to eat you up alive. People think that keeping those skeletons in the closet is protecting somebody, but
Right.
actually it's not protecting anybody, and it's destroying you because you know about it and you will not do anything about it.
Absolutely. And
So my mother became mentally ill, I believe, as a way of checking out. She didn't know what to do. She had no one to turn to. Her mother was in Greenville, South Carolina, and her mother was not really a very loving person. Or supportive person. So I don't think that she had her mother that she could turn to, or anybody else. Her sister was a drunk. Her brother was he was a character. I love my Uncle Bug. He was a character. But back in those days, where did you turn? There was nowhere to turn, and you were afraid to talk to anybody about it because you were so damn ashamed.
Right.
And the pain, and I think the shame and the guilt and the pain that she could not protect her children just took her somewhere else. So she was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic.
Wow.
And she was in mental institutions, more in than out. And when she did come out for periods of time, she would sit in the corner, drink tea, smoke cigarettes, and talk to voices. She was never really there with us, in a way. She came home when I was 15. She came home permanently, but I was her mother rather than I was her protector rather than her being my protector. So it was what it was. And I'll never forget, I'd gone away for a weekend with my daughter, taken away. I think Tiffany was about 6 years old at the time. And I was going to stay a little longer, but my spirit kept saying, go home, go home, go home. Shortly after I went home and got situated, my mother accidentally set herself on fire.
Ooh.
The gown she had on caught on fire. She was burned, 3rd-degree burns from her knee,
oh my God,
all the way up to her breast. And I heard Tiffany scream, and then I ran into the kitchen and I saw my mother on fire. I didn't even have time to get a blanket or anything. I had to roll her so that to try and put the fire out, and then call 911. She was in the hospital. She had to have skin grafts and all. She was in the hospital for almost 4 months. Yeah.
Wow.
So, it was quite an interesting childhood I had. And, certainly the roles were flipped, and just so much craziness that I had to navigate my way through, and
Right.
in the transient hotel we lived in, there were pimps, there were prostitutes, there were drug addicts. I mean, I remember coming out of my front door one time, and a drug addict was laying half out of his door, half in, with the rubber around his arm and the needle on the side. He had OD'd. He was dead.
Wow. And
So
how old were you?
At that time, I think I was about 15.
Wow,
about
so
15 when that 14 or 15 when that happened.
You done seen a lot, you done been through a lot. So you pretty much would say by the time you left the house, you experienced a lot.
Girl, I was well educated to the ways of the world.
The streets educated you, and and not to knock anyone. Yes, you can be so intelligent and book smart, but I think also too having street smarts that helps a lot with your discernment as well, because a lot of people just don't know the things that's out there in the world. But Mama C, I am very appreciative that you're open up and you're telling me and my audience, because we need to hear stuff like this. People always want to hide this. They want to I don't want no one to know, like it's a secret. But me personally, I think talking about it, 1, is therapeutic. 2, when you acknowledge where you came from. 3, you can know where you're headed from. So because that was your past, tell us a little bit back about, because of that experience that you have, where you're at now and how that helped you to get to the place where you're at now.
Well, you know what? When I was 47, I learned that I was an empath. And empathic people, we have the ability to feel other people. We
Absolutely.
know when you tell we know when you're lying to us.
Yes.
There are things that a lot of people who are friends of mine who are, they call me a seer and a knower.
Right.
And I can see things other people aren't able to see, and I know things. My first 5 books, I would wake up in the middle of the night and stuff would just be flowing. I started going to bed with a pen and a pad. And when I was in high school, I took Greg's shorthand. Sometimes it was coming so fast, I'd have to write it in Greg's shorthand, and then later transcribe it. So, for me, everything that happened, see, at age 19, I began to tell this story. I've been telling my story for a long time. I got used to it.
Good.
Why? Make sure when you tell somebody that you tell somebody who you are close to, somebody who cares about you. The first person I ever told about the sexual abuse was my girlfriend, Thikel. And I was 19 years old. And she and I, we were like rebels, we were Muslims together. We were kind of sort of the rebels, they were like, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. Yet we walk around with these headpieces on. I ain't doing that. What? That doesn't make sense, whatever. So when we had both come out by then, and I told her, and I don't remember the response right now, but I know that it made me laugh. I mean, it made me laugh all the way to the core of my soul. And I knew from that point on that I was going to be okay. I just knew that I was going to be okay. And that it was all right to share what had happened to me, because it would help somebody else, I thought. Absolutely. I couldn't be the only person that this has happened to. So whenever when I was director, I designed Harlem's first women's wellness program at the hospital where I worked at the time, and I became the director. And one of the caveat for my doing that was that I knew there were a lot of hurting women out there. Right. And they needed access to good information and a safe haven. And so I created a program. Actually, it was a program designed by a spiritual model. Because you know what? I don't care what you do externally. If you don't go internally and pull up the roots of whatever it is that's choking the life out of you, you're going to experience painful situations for the rest of your life. You got to go to the core of the situation, not dress it up, make it up, and think that everything is okay. Because I don't care how good your makeup looks. I don't care how fly you dress. The bottom line here is all of that is what I call camouflage. Absolutely. You can be just a good camouflager.
You just blend it in. Right.
Just absolutely.
Right.
You could be a good camouflager. I know some women who are superb camouflagers, but I just sit back, get my popcorn, glass of wine, whatever, coffee, piece of cake, and I watch. Right. Because you know what? You can't help people unless they want to help themselves. And sometimes because I am an empath, I can see through people. I can see right through to their souls. And I know when they're hurting. I know when they're hiding. But unless they have some sense that they need to divulge or come out and be the people that God created them to be. Right. Look, I tell people salvation and transformation is God's job. Okay.
Absolutely.
We're here to be seed planters, servants, and messengers. So as long as we stay in our lane and stop trying to play God, we good. Exactly. I tell people when I got my minister's license, I framed it and put it at the top of my closet. And I said, God, you call me. What do you want me to do? And how do you want me to do it?
Right.
And that's how I live my life. When I interact with people, I always say, God, what do I do? How do I help them? Well, see, if people don't realize they need help and they're not seeking any help, all you can do is plant the seed and keep it moving. And
Right.
I learned how to turn my hind cheeks a long time ago and keep it moving, because you
But you know
can't
what,
help everybody,
Mama
because
C?
everybody doesn't want to be helped.
But you know what, Mama C, you said something so profound that I just can't just let it go. Because you said you got your minister license, right? And you hung it up and you asked God, what do you
No,
want
I
to
put
do
it
with
in
it?
the
Oh, I'm
closet.
sorry,
I
yeah, you
didn't
put
hang
it in
it
the
up.
closet. I apologize. But what I want to, what I got from that is that a lot of people, when they do get their minister license, they go inside the church. I'm just happy for you that you people got to understand, you got to go outside the church to get to minister to the people. And it seemed that's what you did. You went outside, because a lot of people want to be indoors, but a lot of people don't want to come inside those church doors. So you got to go out to them and minister to them and
Absolutely.
talk to them. And the key
Absolutely.
point is, and which I know I see you do, you meet them at their level. And
At
I
their level.
love that about you. And people have to realize you have to meet people at their level. Don't bring them high up to you, because they're not there yet. And it's okay
Absolutely.
they're not there yet. But that's one thing I just love about you, that you took that and you put it in your closet and you said, okay, God, what's next? And you did exactly what he told you to. And you told
Absolutely.
them, but they have to want it, like you said. And sometimes the people that's not ready yet, you just be on reserve for them, because when they are ready,
Absolutely.
they will open up to you, because you are a safe place where people just naturally just want to come and talk to you, because you just have that light in you. That is one thing that I do love about you. Yes, but I love
You
what you're
know,
telling me in the audience. I love this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
when we first moved up here, and my daughter and I would go to Walmart, and she'd look for me. I'd be in an aisle, and there'd be a whole aisle of people,
You
because I'd
talking
start
to
talking to one person, and here come others. They hear it and they just gravitated. So she said,
right.
"Oh, I hate going to the store with you." But you know what? One of the things I asked God, well, how do I help? How do I serve? He said, I will send them to you.
Ooh,
That's what I heard. He said, I will send them to you. You don't have to go looking for them, because it's true. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That is so
absolutely,
true.
absolutely.
And so I when someone comes to me, I have to pay attention to who that person is, not who somebody else is, or not what I read in a book,
Right,
but who is this person, and how does God need me to help them? What is it that I need to do?
right.
Uh, and I think that, and I'm not knocking churches at all, because I love churches. I always say to people, where would a lot of these lost souls be if they didn't have church? Because
Absolutely.
there's some people need to be controlled and contained until they awaken, and because I always say, where would they be if there were no church? Well, they'd be out in the world, lost and in the way.
Right.
And so it's better that they be in church, being controlled and contained, than out there not having a clue, scared, and not having any sense of discernment with respect to what it is they're supposed to be doing. So
Right.
church serves a purpose. It really does.
It does.
However, the moment, and I went to church for a while, but the moment I fully awakened, God took me right out of that church. He had work for me to do. My going and sitting and shouting hallelujah and amen and running around the sanctuary wasn't what he had for me to do.
Absolutely.
He had work out in the world for me to do.
Right.
And so I allow God to guide me. And I continue to allow God to guide me. And I think it is because as a kid, my mind was never conditioned by religious rhetoric and rituals.
Okay.
I never lost my connection to God.
That's amazing.
And so I never lost that connection. I think that the reason why I made it through my childhood was because I never lost that connection. I think people who lose that connection and are conditioned to behaviors that are unnatural to their nature. And I tell people, our natural nature is love. And the more farther we get from being loving beings, the more difficult our lives become. And just because you become financially stable, or you have degrees up the wazoo,
that don't mean nothing.
Or you doctor this person or doctor that person, doesn't mean that you're happy or that you're living in the fullness of God's presence in your life. Doesn't mean that. Okay, so externally you achieve X, Y, Z. But what about internally? Where are you? Are you connected to the Spirit of God that resides within you? Are you allowing yourself to be guided? Do you understand your true purpose? Not the one you think, I find that a lot of us, particularly Black folks, because of our history in this country, so many of us spend so much time trying to prove something to somebody. How about proving something to yourself? Absolutely. How about reconnecting to the wholeness of who you are? And the wholeness of who you are includes that spiritual connection. And when you're disconnected from that spiritual anchor that keeps us grounded and moving in a heavenly way, absolutely, the things that you could be achieving, you don't achieve. Why? Because you may not be living in the fullness of your divine purpose.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of Family Secrets. Please tune in next Tuesday for part 2. Lady K.